At the end of the first season of Monarch: The Legacy of Monsters, we get a chilling and terrifying scene of Kong emerging from behind the jungle hills of Skull Island. Now what does this entail? What does this mean for Kong and Skull Island and his part in the Monsterverse timeline? Will he be the main focus for the second season? And what is the role of Apex Cybernetics? What are they playing in the series? Are they creating a mechanical giant as was stated in the end credits of KOTM? Well, here in this video we will try to answer all of these questions as much as we can. So let's get to it. Let's begin with when does this exactly happen? So the series started in 2015 in the modern timeline and with flashbacks to the 1950s and 60s, and then 1982 after Lee Shaw ventured into the Axis Mundi. He managed to come back up after 20 days there, but due to a differential space-time displacement and continuum, the surface world had already fast-forwarded 20 years into the future, meaning that spending one day in the Axis Mundi, that underspace, equal to 1 year on the surface. So when Lee Shaw, Kate and May were dragged there in 2015, they were trapped for 2 days and only managed to come back up using the Hourglass equipment from 1962 and with the help of Godzilla killing the Iron Dragon. Therefore, by the time they reached the surface in Skull Island, they were promptly received by their friends and Apex in 2017, meaning 2 years had passed since their departure in Kazakhstan, and this is where we were left at the end of the first season. And then with Kong emerging from behind the trees, roaring at the Apex facility. Now let's take a look at Kong's design and size as seen in the series. Well, he obviously is the same one and only Kong from the franchise. He has the same looks and body design. Interestingly enough, he had already grown his beard and had become an adult by this time. So when we first saw the Monsterverse Kong, chronologically that is, in this universe, it was in 1973 and he was 104 feet tall. Back then he was still a juvenile. By the time Godzilla vs. Kong, he had grown to 337 feet or 102 meters. So backtracking a little bit, during the events of Kingdom Kong when Camazotz appeared on the island, Kong was stated to be 270 feet in height or 82 meters. And this was said to have occurred in 2021, which means 4 years after the Monarch series incident. Therefore Kong here, in the last episode of Monarch, would have been a bit shorter, which is why he seems to be just over the tree line in this series, therefore putting him at a height of around 250 feet or 76 meters, and that is our estimate. And yeah, most of the trees in Skull Island are around 60 to 70 meters or maybe 50 meters, therefore putting our estimate correctly. So let's take a look at the storm over Skull Island. Is it the same one caused by Camazotz, you know, the perpetual storm that was cast over the island and destroyed the ecosystem, leading to Monarch building a domed facility to house the surviving Skull Island species and also Kong? Fortunately, no, not yet. That particular storm was created by Monster Zero during the events of KOTM in 2019, and the remnants of it stayed active for over 2 years, and it was attracted by Camazotz to the island in 2021, 2 years later after KOTM. So since the events of Monarch: The Legacy of Monsters ended in 2017, it will be another 2 years before Ghidorah and the Titans would awaken. Thus this storm here would just only be a regular tropical storm that occurs every now and then on that island. But it is interesting that Apex Cybernetics has a facility there, already has one there. And this place was supposed to be under the sole jurisdiction of only Monarch. Anyway, is the story going to shift now to a more Skull Island-centric story in Season 2? And will Kong play a more active role in it? Well, the ending seems to say that. Remember that if Season 2 is made, then the timeline would most probably start in 2017 itself, then go on to the remaining years before King of the Monsters. Kind of a way to cover up the time between Godzilla 2014 and KOTM. In all these years, Kong reigned supreme in the island, in Skull Island, and there were no other titan that had been reported on the island during those years that tried to challenge his supremacy. The last was the Kraken back in the 80s, and before that was the Skull Devil in 1973. The next notable incident that we know of that happens on the island would be during KOTM itself, when the Skull Crawlers answered Ghidorah's call to hunt. Kong, on the other hand, ignored it, being an alpha, refused to call and massacred the Skull Crawlers that emerged out of their subterranean habitat. Then the next big thing would be the events of Kingdom Kong, with Kong defeating Camazotz and a perpetual storm covering the island, and finally the dome being built on that island. So anyway, what is the role of Apex Cybernetics in this series? Well, it was a pleasant surprise that they included the elusive corporation into the storyline, with May being a focal point between them, the characters of the story, and the organization. Apex was said to have been created by Walter Simmons sometime after the events of the Muto battle in San Francisco, and their ultimate work was, of course, Mecha-Godzilla in GVK, Godzilla vs. Kong. Within these years before that, they have diversified their work into a lot of stuff, including the trials for exploration of the Hollow Earth. This one culminated in the HEAV transports that Gia and the others utilized to follow Kong into that place, into the Hollow Earth. So it's obvious that Apex would have had quite a few years of time to research and develop such vehicles, as well as pour tons of resources and work into the creation of many other facilities of theirs around the world, as well as the creation of Mecha-Godzilla. This means that they should have had sound working knowledge about the Titans and their domain, Hollow Earth, and therefore this is where the loose ends are being tied, with them being in Skull Island and actually seen doing the basic groundwork for their later feats of Titan engineering. Okay, one other thing. If you're a die-hard Monsterverse fan, you would know that in one of the end credit scenes of Godzilla King of the Monsters, one such news snippet states that Monarch had been trying to recreate organic titans on the island, for quite a while before KOTM, and they have also tried making a mechanized giant on the island before the events of KOTM. Well, what if this is where we pick up on in Season 2 of Monarch the Legacy of Monsters, with Apex instead of Monarch using the source code of May to develop a working neural interface and thus creating a mechanical Kong to combat the giant ape there on the island. This would again be research and development into later creating the bigger Mecha-Godzilla, and it would explain why Kong instantly knew that Mecha-Godzilla was the real bad guy in GVK, and ended up helping Godzilla in the fight, with him having faced an earlier mecha, theoretically, in Skull Island before KOTM, if this ever happens. This would tie up many loose ends. And lastly, it is interesting to note that the prologue of the series started with Bill Randa on Skull Island being chased by the Mother Longlegs, and then ended up with the remaining Randas running away from Kong on Skull Island itself. It seems a bit interesting, right? Back to square one. Anyway, now we have come to the end of the video. If you like this one, then check this other one as well. And do check out our channel for other Monsterverse content. We might just have things that you haven't seen before. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, fam.